You're listening to the Australian Hunting and Beyond podcast with Matt, where we talk about hunting, shooting, fishing, camping, and everything else that the great outdoors has to offer. Let's get into it. I'm recording a heap at the moment because it's holidays is good, and I know you've been a teacher as well. It makes life easy. Actually, I had a teacher on yesterday. Shout out to Zach from Stack Images. I love his photography. So it's been good. This is the second one for today after I got snuck in a run between hand. But mate, you were on about a year ago. So 12 months ago, we had you on, and I always appreciate our conversations, and I love watching your content. And you were sort of tossing up the idea of making a bit of a how-to series or just a bit of overview for people, especially with a focus of eating rutty bucks, because I think that's one of the reasons we jumped at the podcast at the time, because there was a bit going around social media talking about throw it to the dogs, leave it there, boil a rock and eat the rock with it, sort of thing. Yeah. And you were like, hold on, I do this all the time and there's nothing wrong with it. You just got to, be a bit cautious, careful, etc. And then you came up with the idea going, you know what, I'm going to make some content on this. So show people what you actually do so that you can do it, which I think is an unbelievable idea. So they're progressed, done, ready to go out?
Mostly, yeah.
Mostly?
Yeah.
Well, look, I've had the privilege, I hope it's not a secret, that I've been having a look at them before you release them. And
that's not a secret.
Yeah, good. I think they're great. I think that as a resource for people, just breaking it down, and you've done different videos with a different focus. And I know before we jumped on today, I watched, I think video 5, which is, the different equipment you're using in the kitchen with it. I think they're a great resource to have out there, and especially with us leading in or starting to prep and starting to think about the rut that's coming up. It's only, probably 80 days away, maybe less now, for that time frame. So I think it's a really good time for these to be dropping for people to start to think about and putting some of it into practice too. So, mate, have you enjoyed doing them?
Yeah, I did, or I am, because I've still got one more to tidy up. But I do like mucking around with my cameras and making videos. I don't kid myself with how big or small I believe my my audience is. It's just like, we had this chat last time about how we're both educators, and I just like to make some contributions to the community that might be useful or other people might find useful. And I've really tried to have the different videos come out in covering a particular point. But besides all that, I think it's the whole idea is basically the more knowledge you have, the better off you're going to be. So even the ones that are talking about the gear in the field or the gear in the kitchen, I go over a fair bit of stuff, but I allude to the fact that I could go over a heap more stuff in future videos. But it's less about all the stuff that you have and more about just knowing how you got to go about things or knowing how to take care of things. And then similarly with some of the earlier videos, it's more just about the fallow rut in general, so people have an idea about what it is when it starts, but then also what's actually happening to the bucks, why they're doing things differently, what's happening to their bodies. There's a lot of detail in there about how we killed some bucks sort of mid to late March and they were covered in fat, and then give it another month and they're just, nearly collapsing because they're so exhausted, and what that means for meat quality. And yeah, I think it's a really good start, because I'm sure as the years go on, or after this coming rut, I'll have other ideas to make other videos. But certainly for now, I think it's kind of scratched that itch that I had, where every time something was being mentioned on social media about eating bucks during the rut, I just see so many people say that they're not worth eating, and it wasn't like I was really cranky about it, but I just felt bad for maybe some new hunters who were getting this idea, oh crap, so yeah, I'm going to go hunt the rut, but I have to leave it there, because it's just not the case. But it also outlines how, the quality of some of the venison that you might shoot and as an example, around Australia Day, it might not be as good as some of the stuff you shoot a month beforehand. So things to consider in that space as well.
No, I liked it. And I will say 2 things there is the one today, all my cooking's done with cast iron. So I love the fact you do the same with your pots and pans there. And then casting back to the first couple of videos where you're sort of overviewing the rut and giving some information, some of the footage, geez, it was just making me so damn pumped up for, March and April to get here already, because it's, you got some cracking footage. The Bucks and does the Bucks chasing the does around. It is, it just makes me so excited to get out there and chase these things that we love around.
Yeah, mate. And that's one of the strengths that I have in terms of, like a journalist who writes for magazines and somebody who puts out a little bit of content around the place, is that I've got a decent idea about how to work a camera, but usually in the rut, I've got my dad with me, and he is better on the camera than what I am, has better gear than I do, but most importantly, he's only concerned with using the camera, so I can focus just on the hunting and he can capture a heap of that footage. So most of the footage in those early videos my dad got, I got a bit here and there, and my friend Andrew may have got a couple of bits of footage here and there as well. But the other thing too is, I don't necessarily have the skills to put together that really cinematic style hunting video like the boys from Twin Elements or something like that. It's just, if I wanted to go down that way, I'd have to learn a bunch more things and spend a lot more time. So getting a heap of footage during the rut is something that, me and the people in my circle enjoy doing. And then a cool way to be able to showcase that is including it in videos like this, where people might learn a few skills or learn some different perspectives, but they still get to watch some really cool hunting footage. I forget, it might be the second video about how the buck's condition changes. There are some, even some decent kill shots in there that I haven't put on YouTube before of 2 really good bucks that my wife shot actually, that you can see just in the footage just how close they got. That really dark one, I think the shot was only about 30 meters with her rifle, and my dad was probably only 30 meters from the buck when it got shot. So if you just like watching deer do cool things, there's plenty in these videos for you to watch.
Well, I mean, who doesn't? That's the first thing. I think it's sort of, if you're a hunter, you do love watching these animals. Whether I can't help myself if I see one on the side of the road that it's completely not huntable, and I still want to sit and watch them and just see how they interact and what they're doing. And there's been a couple of times I've gone out and seen them on the wrong side of the fence, and that's cool. I don't mind, just sit there and watch them and see how they interact with the environment and try and pick up some tips and tricks. And I thoroughly enjoy the videos. It's funny, isn't it? Like you sort of just mentioned about the content creation and the different styles. And there's so many different ways of people doing things, and sometimes I'll get onto something that is super popular and it doesn't strike a chord with me, whereas I'll find something that's not super popular and I'm so much more engaged or interested in it. So I think the fact that you're doing these and putting them out there is a great thing, because it doesn't matter how many people watch it. It's a matter of if there's a resource there that someone might engage better with that than something else, and they learn and prosper as a hunter. That's a win for everybody.
Oh, mate, absolutely. And it's kind of this is the first time I've really seriously engaged with a lot of the footage that I've got over the last couple of ruts. I've put out shorter videos here and there of some deer getting shot and cut up, but this one, I sort of planned it all out, and I really went over a heap of the stuff that we captured, particularly stuff my dad captures, because he's just on that camera every single time anything cool's going on. And it's making me think a bit about what I might do in the future now, not just in terms of other videos that I might be able to tack onto this idea, but also how I actually want to spend my time in the rut, because I thought I'd be more time poor last year with my son being 6 months old, but I wasn't. just because he was so much easier to look after, and my wife and my mum would just kind of look after him when I'd go out hunting, and it was easy enough. And then I'd just sort of have him on my chest rig when I sent Kira out with a rifle, and I'd just shoot rabbits around the house until she'd call me and say she'd shot something, and we'd come and retrieve the meat. But this year he's obviously going to be 18 months old, so he's a lot more active, and there's going to be a lot more going on. So I'm kind of thinking, rightio, what am I, essentially from the middle of March till early May, what time am I going to have? What's it really going to look like? And of course I'm going to be able to hunt, but I'm thinking about if I get lucky and get something on the ground fairly early with my compound bow, say, I might sort of go out with my son in one of those hiking backpacks with him in it, take a rifle and spend a lot more time trying to get footage and maybe shoot something with a rifle if I feel like it, as opposed to just, flogging my guts out, with the bow. But, at the same time, if I have the time set aside, I'd love to go out with my bow again or with my trad bow, because I still haven't got one with a trad bow. So I just want to be a lot more deliberate with the time that I have. And if I can get inside 30 meters of deer with my big camera lens, which I should be able to do, no worries, I could get some other really cool footage to share with people. So I'm going to try and do it all if I can.
I mean, that makes complete sense. The little fella, it's kids throw a little bit of a mix in, but then it's sort of offset with the rewards that you get from it too. So, and mine are pretty damn funny at the moment, running around making different calls. They're getting better at the red deer call, I think. But it's hell cute to see them learning and watching things and being able to point out deer and talk about them, and that they know the male is the one with the antlers, and like all these little things. Watching them learn, I get just as much sort of enjoyment about it. It's just sort of, it's all that, it's a tricky conundrum. I'm in a little bit of a different spot to you, is that it's so far away for me to go and hunt, to take them and not, I get limited time to do it. Then it's the opposite. I'd love to be like, have something that's 20 minutes away and the kids can come along, because if they blow a hunt, who cares? It's 20 minutes away. I can come back again shortly. That's right. Maybe one day I'll hopefully get out of Sydney and buy a big property somewhere, but they'll be around for that. So that has to be cool too, being able to take your kid along.
Yeah, mate. Well, we're just an outdoorsy family, as you and probably a few people who are listening know. So we have had our boy out with us a lot, not just hunting, but just on camping trips. So managing that, it hasn't really been too bad. We've just had to be prepared. And I've had some interesting chats with my wife and some of my friends about this, certainly over the last 6 months, because I'm sort of at an interesting point in my hunting life where I enjoy bow hunting more than I enjoy rifle hunting, but I'm starting to write about firearms a lot more for the magazine, which has started to make me enjoy my rifles a little bit more. They just kind of took a back seat for maybe the last half dozen years, so I'm really into those again, and maybe doing some different jobs with them. But I kind of land at the conclusion that the bow hunting thing for me is often very selfish, and I don't mean that in a bad way, like I'm neglecting my family, but it's so much tougher than rifle hunting. So I might want to give myself a week, and if I can shoot 1 or 2 bucks over that week with a bow, I'd have to work fairly hard at it. Whereas if I gave myself a week with a rifle, oh man, I could pretty easily shoot a buck every morning and every evening if I wanted to. And not that I would choose to do that. It's more just an example of the opportunities and how much easier they are to come by with the rifle. So I'm kind of sitting here thinking, well, I could have my son on my back when I'm trying to bow hunt, and a lot of stalks could get ruined, but we'd still have a really good time. But I'm also into this idea of maybe sitting a couple of 100 meters away from some of these scrapes that are in the open. I can put him in this backpack with a sunshade over it. I can have some, food there and maybe some toys, and we're not going to disturb the deer that much. But I could, in a fairly relaxed manner, shoot some deer, whether it's, I shoot every ugly one that comes through to manage the herd or whatever it is. And then I get the opportunity to have him there while I'm getting photos and I'm cutting it up and all that stuff. So, it's almost like I might sacrifice some bow hunting time, which is seems like a bit of a pain to me on that personal level because I love bow hunting so much. But if I'm getting to hang out with my boy, then it's kind of silly to feel like I'm sacrificing one kind of fun because having him there with me is going to be fantastic. And he's only going to be 18 months, so he's going to slow me down until he's probably in his early teens, and then I'll probably be struggling to start keeping up with him. So he's going to be with me for most of these hunts until I die probably. So I'm not that worried about losing some of what I like to do because it's just going to be great to have him there.
I get where you're coming from. We obviously love camping as a family, my wife and I, and we did it when our eldest boy was born and with him. And then when the twins came along, it just put a massive spanner in the works and far more difficult. And we're only just starting to get back to the hang of it and starting to get away. We were able to go away for Christmas for a good 10 days and with the twins. And they're at that age now that they're walking and they understand. That was the one we found is you'd tell them to stop. We went camping one time. It was an absolute nightmare because you'd ask them to do something they had no idea. Whereas now they're more at that age where you tell them to do something and they listen majority of the time, I should say. But the oldest one is he's awesome. So you ask him to hold hands with one of them and he can do it. So it just makes life so much easier. I love that you were talking about, I think you run, what do you run for the backpack? I've got the Osprey Poco Plus off the top of my head. And
yeah, I got
so
one of them.
Good. Chucking a kit in it and the visor. Like I was squid jigging with a couple of my kids. I don't even think I'll put the photos up on Facebook yet, but I'll put them up on the socials. But I got to get out there and when my hand went down and start squid jigging and just had one in the backpack while the wife had to, teaching them about the rocks and the sea and things like that. And we sort of alternated. But just the ability that there was a couple of times I had all three, having one in the backpack was so easy because I'd only have to hold hands with two of them. They make such a great resource.
Yeah, mate, I bought one of those as well, the Osprey Poco Plus or whatever. It's funny, I bought a wilderness equipment one just off Marketplace in the town where I live for about $100. And I used it a little bit and it was okay, but I within the first couple of trips, I found not having that kind of kickstand so I could sit it upright on the ground. I was like, this really, really sucks. Because I'd try and lean him up against a tree, sit down. And so I said, bugger it. I said, let's buy a good one. And my wife's like, yeah, okay, no worries. And then I'm starting to do a bit of Googling and I'm asking a few people who have kids and they've all indicated this Osprey is the best one. And I saw that I might have paid $500-ish. And some of my mates who aren't hunters, they're like, man, that's ridiculous. I'm like, mate, my Kafaru costs nearly 3 times as much. I'm quite happy to invest in this Osprey, and if we're lucky enough to have other kids, it'll still be useful. Or if somebody, a mate of ours has a kid, when our boy outgrows it, then it'll still be useful to them. But yeah, so that stand, so I can sit him on the ground and he can sort of sit upright in it. That's unreal. The sunshade was unreal because I just had to move some stock in some of our paddocks yesterday, so I just put him on my back. So I was hands free. I was fairly mobile, but he was on my back talking a whole bunch of smack to the goats and the sheep and whatever. But I wasn't worried about him in the sun, and it looks as though it can hold enough gear to keep us fairly occupied. But I'm toying with the idea of either getting some of those big waterproof kind of 20-litre drums and stashing them in the scrub near some scrapes with some gear in them, or just making sure that anywhere we go in the rut, my vehicle's not too far away. Because, I can just see if I shoot something at 7:30 in the evening, all of a sudden, getting back to the car by 7:45 has turned into much later. And it's funny, people would bring this up before I had a kid, and I'm just like, what are you talking about? But if I don't get him back to the car and back to camp fairly quickly, then obviously he's going to need his nap, he's going to need his dinner, and it's just going to be a freaking nightmare. So I'm going to have to be really smart about, how quickly I can get him to some other places. But back to that backpack, I could shoot with it on my back, no worries. I could shoot with him on the ground in that backpack, no worries. But I need to get him to the point where I can put some earmuffs on him and he leaves them there, because that's what's going to be the problem. I've taken him to the range a couple of times, and every time I've put him in that pack and he puts the earmuffs on, he's looking at me, he's got a big smile, and I go to line up my shot and I look at him and he's just ripping the earmuffs off, and I'm like, God damn it. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, every time he gets a bit bigger and can do a few more things, it's easier in some ways, but it becomes more difficult because he gets into more trouble in other ways. So yeah, it'll be interesting.
Mate, they are probably like I've put some miles on that backpack because when the twins were born, obviously, like, what do you do especially when they couldn't walk? Take him into daycare on my own. It used to be hilarious. I'd have one in the backpack, one in my arms, and then obviously my eldest could walk. But I will say this is that they're rated for, don't quote me, but I think they say under like 10 kilos or 12 kilos is sort of the max out. My 4.5-year-old loves it in there, and we've had no issues. I loaded him up. I had him in there over the break, and a heap of tackle in that sort of where you put your stand part has quite a decent size compartment. And so I had a heap of tackle, the waters on the sides. We loaded that thing up, and man, it didn't miss a beat. So the other thing I would love it for is actually a bit of training. So if you want to go for a walk and chuck one of the kids in, happy days. Like it's it works really, really well. One of the best investments I've had for the kids and getting them out there, whether it be going for a walk, just doing a bit of hiking, taking them fishing. It just, especially with 3, because it's. For me, there's obviously myself and the wife. 1-on-1's pretty manageable, but when you got that third outlier, and if it's a cheeky little bugger like my boy twin, he's just into anything and everything. So he's the one we got to watch. He's he loves to do a run. We'll get to Bunnings, and he pretty much wants to run down every single aisle, and he's not the kid that sort of looks back and goes, I'm getting a bit far from mum and dad like the other two. He just goes. So it's pretty damn funny, but invaluable resource. And I think $500, it's been well worth that for me, definitely. But how did you go last rut, mate? Because we haven't we speak a little bit off the air, but for people out there that may not have seen some of the followed whatever you've been doing, was it a good one?
Yeah, mate. I had an absolute blast, and there are some things that happened that I know I can do better next time. But for just the way it panned out in terms of really my first rut technically ever with a compound bow, I had a really good time. So to summarise a little bit, because I go over some of these in the videos, but yeah, I think it was around the middle of March. I rattled a buck into a good scrape with a friend of mine, just blind rattled, like we hadn't seen or heard anything. It's just a spot where there's a heap of activity, and I had a buck come in, and I made a shot on him, and it's not like I made a bad shot, but I wasn't as strong a shot as what I wanted it to be, and he kind of heard the bow go off and spun around a little bit, so it wasn't a real good hit. And then a friend of mine found him 2 weeks later, and he died within maybe 200 meters of where I'd shot him, and I was just looking in kind of the wrong direction with this friend of mine. And I think we mentioned before, I'm red-green colorblind, so following a blood trail is almost a waste of time for me. But that was the first time I'd ever come to full draw on a deer with my compound bow. So that kind of bugged me a little bit, because even though I felt like I did most things right, I didn't make the shot as strongly as what I wanted to. And I was using a button release. It was called a stand clicker. So that it's like a thumb button, but there's a click in there to sort of slow you down. But then and I actually shot a competition just before that weekend, I think, with that release. And I didn't shoot as well as what I normally do, because I was just getting a little bit punchy. So then after that buck, I said, screw this. I'm just going to go out with my hinge releases, because I know I can shoot them really well. So it was the weekend after that, I think the 22nd of March, I was out on a Friday afternoon with my mate Bailey, and we kind of just floating around, just seeing what was about, and we could hear up a bit of a hill in some thick pines. A buck it wasn't so much croaking, it was kind of making a bit of a guttural sound, like what I think was there was a younger deer or a spiker close to his scrape, so he was just kind of just trying to make that younger deer go away. So we just got up on the fence. I said, Bailey, seriously, man, you're going to touch those rattles and he's going to come straight at us. And he must have only hit those rattles for 5 or 10 seconds, and I could hear him coming. So I came to full draw when he was about 50 or 60 meters out in the pines, and by the time I'd got to my anchor, he was nearly on top of us, and he sort of it was really close to dark, so he got to within about 4 meters at full tilt and then planted his feet in the ground and turned around and trotted off a little ways. And I nearly let my bow down, because that's what's happened to me a lot with the trad bow. Like, I sort of get him in super, super close, and I can't hold at full draw for as long as I can with the compound. So I sort of sit there waiting for my shot opportunity. I'm like, oh crap, I should have been at full draw already. And then he walked off to what was probably just over 20 meters, which, if you're good with a trad bow, is okay, but I kind of lost my confidence with it, so I wouldn't back myself to hit a deer at 25 meters with my trad bow anymore. So I nearly let down. I was like, oh wait, I've got my compound. This is a freaking chip shot. So I just made a really strong shot on him, and that's the one where you see in some of the videos he probably had an inch of fat over his back, so he was starting to get into rut mode, but he hadn't lost any of his condition yet, and he was kind of like an old gnarly buck, and so I'm counting that one as my first buck ever technically. Then the weekend after that, I rattled one in for Bailey, and he shot it at the spot where I lost that first deer, and that's when my friend Andrew found the head of that first deer. So I've got 2 under my belt, even though I don't like thinking about the fact I wasted the meat of the other one, but I think he might have been one of the only animals I lost last year with my compound bow, and I probably shot 50 or 60 animals, so that's not too bad a record. Then after that last weekend in March, I actually got invited as a writer for the magazine to go on like an industry hunt not too far from where I normally do my hunting. So I was there with Mick, the editor from the magazine, Australian Sporting Shooter, and there were people there from Zerotech, Spiker, Lisco Arms, and it was kind of like a thing where everybody was hanging out and networking and whatever, but there was plenty of deer hunting happening as well, and there were lots of really good deer getting shot. I didn't shoot one, and some of the guides there seemed to think that was going to be a problem for me, but I was like, guys, seriously, once I'm done here, I'm driving 5Ks up the hill and I'm going to be neck deep in bucks anyway. So that was really good, because some of those people I met Matt Jones there, who I think you've had on the podcast before. He's a freaking legend. And that's where I started to get really interested in the firearms again. Then I believe it ended up being about the 14th of April, I got back to my main spot, and I was just into the deer so hard with my dad, and they were just everywhere, and we were having a really good time. And I ended up stalking one as he was bedded on his scrape in some long grass, and as he stood up, I made a really, really good shot, but he was quartering away hard enough that the arrow sort of skimmed along his rib cage, so it went in underneath his shoulder on the onside, but it exited in front of that same shoulder, so it kind of went between the shoulder and his rib cage. And I was really annoyed that happened, because I did everything right. Like, I didn't rush the shot. It was just so good. But I ran into him a couple of days later, and he was on the same hill holding a whole bunch of does, keeping a whole bunch of other bucks at bay. So I smoked him with a rifle. So I felt good to kind of have that closure, but I also wasn't that concerned with the fact that I'd injured him, because he was doing just fine. And then I basically just faffed around looking at a few more deer, and my wife shot a little one, and by that stage, I'd had my son with me for a bit, I'd had my nephew with us for a little bit, so I kind of just started to wind down. So between me and my mates, we had a few on the deck, and there were still just so many there. As is always the case, I learned enough last rut that I should be even better this coming rut. So, oh man, I'm so freaking keen, as everybody is, everybody gets keen for the next rut the day their current rut finishes.
Hey there, listeners. Are you looking for that awesome hunting t-shirt or hoodie to level up your wardrobe? Well, head over to the AHB store and check out the range that we have to offer. We have a variety of different collections for you. So whether it's supporting the show, hunting, fishing, camping, drone fishing, or something else outdoors, we probably have something there that is for you. Each piece is designed so that you can look great whilst representing your outdoor passion. Whether you're down the local, hanging with friends, training for the rut, or just chilling at home, there's a design to suit. Just search Australian Hunting and Beyond Linktree and head to the store. What are you waiting for? You're just one click away from representing that outdoor passion with style. So, let's get into that new clothing. Oh, it's so true, isn't it? I think I'm excited about this one because I'm also doing Croak Camp, which I'm just getting a bunch of listeners together who are going to just come up, and we're all going to camp in the same spot. Everyone's going to do their own thing and just hunt as you would normally, but we're just going to share camp and just be around and have a good laugh. And I did it with the Hunters Campfire. I went up to their last one, and that was good fun. I enjoyed that and enjoyed the meeting two of the boys. Mark wasn't there, but Jono and Hurls are top blokes, and then everyone else that was there that I got to meet were really good guys. So I had a really good time, and then went, you know what, it's a long way away, and I didn't get to spend that many days up there and no recon and things like that. So what about I do something similar and do it a bit closer or where I usually hunt, so I've got a bit more of a background on the area. I know some spots to go to, etc., etc. So that's the plan this time. So I'm looking forward to that, and I've with the kids being a bit older now, I can get away for a bit longer as well. So that'll that'll be a test for me though, because I think I'm getting to the period where it's probably going to be the longest I've been away from the family, and I sort of get to that 3-day mark and I really start to miss them, and I want to be back. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes, but I'm hell pumped, and I think that's just going to be another element to this, that there's some really good guys that I know are coming, and some that I haven't met yet, which I'm really looking forward to as well. So it's just a good time of year. I winding in from January. And for me, summer, I do like to get out fishing, and got a fair bit, relatively a fair bit done this time, other than a couple of injuries and whatnot that stopped me. But winding sort of down on the fishing, or sort of mid-pass, starting to think back for the hunting, and then starting to train for it. And it's just an exciting time. It just starts to all ramp up so quickly coming into January. So I'm super excited. And then you sort of, even to the DPI, the booking system is, you're almost, we're not that far from having to book. I think I'm about 15. Yeah. Oh, mate, or is it 21? All right. One of those 15, 21 days out, and we're booking for the rut. And you're chasing those spots in the forest, and hopefully the forest you want to get. So it's a damn exciting time. Oh, mate. Yeah. Like sometimes I feel, I don't know, I don't so much make fun of some of our mates across the ditch in America, but it's interesting because there's a rhythm to social media when it comes to the American hunters, in terms of, as soon as it's late August or early September, then all the people I follow, a lot of my bow hunters, there's just all this stuff about elk. And then once that's kind of over, there's the whitetail thing going on, and there's a bit of antelope and mule deer sprinkled throughout that as well. But then around this time now, my social media is full of people going to the Lancaster Archery Classic, and there'll be stuff about Vegas. And so the American stuff has this rhythm about the elk rut, the whitetail rut, and then the archery tournaments. And we're just so lucky we get to do almost whatever we want all the time, which is great. But having that rut to look forward to and to plan for, it's truly become one of the greatest passions of my life. Even very early in the piece, when I was much more of a pig hunter, not because I like pigs more than deer, but because I had more access to pigs than deer. And I remember experiencing my first couple of ruts and kind of just feeling really lucky that I had the opportunity, because I wasn't sure whether I'd still be able to maintain my access. And of course, it's led into me being able to keep that access and
I just, and like, my wife loves it as well. And it's funny, like when I'm sitting around talking with my friends who I do a lot of bow hunting with, like we don't even really talk about the years in terms of like the numbers or whatever. Like it's about 2 ruts ago this, or 5 ruts ago this. Like basically every single conversation just revolves around the rut. And our wives and partners, like on one hand, all think we're crazy, but they're also like, well, of all the things they are to be really passionate and ADHD and obsessed about and with, hunting deer has got to be way better than a whole bunch of other stuff, like throwing money away at the pub. And I mean, I'll have a beer just as much as the next person, but it's just and it seems like it was only a couple of months ago really we were starting to get G'd up about some of the winter hunts, and we were so exhausted after the rut last year. And it comes around quick, as we always say, with how busy everyone's lives are these days. And it's a good chance to kind of slow down and only think about deer hunting, but at the same time you get worn out very quickly because it's early starts, late finishes, not eating that much, practicing shooting your bows while trying to maintain the hunting. But it's going to be good. It's always good.
I think that's one. I tend to not do as much hunting in summer, and I reckon a couple of reasons for it. A, it's damn hot. Like yesterday I think it was 38 degrees, so it's very warm, and then the total fire ban's in state forest, so it's really hard to book in advance and then sort of chance it of getting down and things like that. We've had a bit of a milder summer in the sense of fires and total fire bans, which has been a nice one. But then it sort of comes to me for the meat spoilage as well, that if you're shooting something and then we got one, I was lucky enough, my mate Dan took us to one of his properties and he nailed one. And just getting that back to the car and how hot it was, and then one of the shoulders ended up with maggots on it. And I thought we did a pretty damn good job of not leaving it exposed. But they still tended to, obviously something happened somewhere. It's so hot. It was, I think by the time it was 8 o'clock, it was already in the mid 30s that day. And we're like, Jesus, this is, it's a real tricky one, because I thoroughly love deer hunting all the time, but then I also don't want to waste the meat as well. So when we're sort of getting to this point, I'm getting closer to knowing, the temperatures is going to start to dip. This is when we're really going to start focusing. Yeah. And when you get around to the rut, the temperatures are generally pretty good that you can hang them, overnight, and you're not going to lose meat and things like that, which is far nicer, I guess. But I guess that's the sort of offset of not having seasons, that you can hunt any time round, but then there's complications with that as well. Yeah, well, the last couple of summers, I try to navigate the heat with, just recovering that meat as quickly as possible. But of course, different things can happen to complicate that process. I remember I shot to do a rifle review. I shot a couple of does with a mate of mine. It must have been a November morning. It was an exceptionally hot day, but I had them both down, and then in the esky it was really quick, so that wasn't a problem. And I shot another doe with my bow at a similar time, got that one really looked after. Then it was just before Christmas, with just the way the year went, my wife and I had kind of neglected to take care of our little mob of sheep here at home the way we needed to, and we kind of just found ourselves with like, we have far too many sheep. I don't mean anything stupid happened. We just didn't need that many sheep, so we said, let's hire a cool room. There's an ex-student of mine who does some of this mobile butcher stuff. I said, we'll just pay him to come over and we'll kill 7 sheep, and we'll leave him in the cool room for a week, and he can come and butcher them up after, the weekend afterwards. It'll be fine. So we did that, and then I said, we could use a bit more meat. So a couple of days before, so we'd killed the 7 sheep, put them in the cool room. A couple of days before he came out to butcher them all up, I just drove out to one of my main properties and just shot 3 deer in the head, like in the spotlight.
because the farmer wanted some venison, and I know people don't like spotlighting deer. Like I had a good time in terms of it was more fun than going to Woolworths or the butcher shop, but I'm not kidding myself that I was some great hunter. Like I just wanted some more meat. So I put those deer in the cool room as well. So we ended up having 10 animals to process around the 20th of December. So it was still stinking hot, but having that cool room allowed us to do a good job with that. And once we build a shed, we'll have a cool room in there. So some of these summer meat runs will be a little bit easier. Because the thing with summer too, like, obviously got to be a bit careful because plenty of the does might have dependent fawns and whatever, but the deer are in the best condition they're going to be in all year about now.
Yeah.
Like I've seen a whole bunch of velvet bucks. I've watched them grow out the last month or so, and yeah, so it's currently the 23rd of January, so I might head out in a few days and try and shoot one with my bow, because it'll be hard enough in the antlers to be able to preserve that trophy, but man, they'll just be such good eating. So yeah, because a lot of the best meat hunting time is in winter, but if there's not much feed around, then the deer can be pretty skinny then too. So again, there's always a compromise somewhere, but as long as you're doing whatever you can to keep the meat clean and whatever, then you're usually going to be okay.
Yeah, 100%. It's tricky. And I look, if you had the setup, and I've said this before, I personally don't do it in the state forest because I've just had a couple of experiences when it's just been too hot. I've spent a lot of money to get where I'm going, and it's a total fire ban, and the weekend's wasted. And I sort of sit there and go, if I had access close to home and I had a cool room and all that, it's a different story. I'd be probably all over it because you've got the ability to salvage that meat in a quick and safe manner, as opposed to God knows, what you're doing in the state forest being further away. Now, if I lived 5-10 minutes from the state forest, I'd probably be out in the state forest doing it. It's very different from, that 4-hour travel and then all the eskies and the ice and all the razzmatazz that goes on with that. How do you break it down in summer? Do you break it down, you quarter it out straight into the esky, or how do you go about it?
Like anything, mate, it just depends on the situation. And I think I might even talk about this in some of those videos, like that doe that I said I shot with my compound bow. Like I was trying to shoot a doe with my compound just to prove to myself that I could, because stalking a fallow doe is a much harder thing to do than stalking most goats or pigs, at least in my area. So I just wanted to sort of confirm, if I wanted to go out and shoot a doe with my compound, I could probably get it done. So that was all right. And then once I had her on the ground, I was like, oh geez, it's going to be 30 degrees. I need to figure this out quick. So I think with her, I actually whipped the back legs and front legs off with the skin on and put them in game bags, got them in my esky as quickly as I could, got the back straps off her and some, maybe the heart and stuff. And then I just drove straight home. So they were on ice in the back of my car, and I came home and I put her in the fridge. With those deer that I spotlighted, what I tend to do if I do that, and I usually do that before Christmas every year because some of the farmers ask me to get them some venison. So I will take frozen milk bottles, as many as I can fit into, say, maybe like a 40 or an 80 litre esky, and I'll just shoot the deer in the head, bleed them, knock all the guts out, and then I'll just shove a couple of frozen milk bottles in the cavities, and then that'll sort of help things to just start to get cooler until I get them back to in this case, again, I'd hired a cool room, so I knew once I got him in that cool room and they'd been in there for a few hours, it'd be fine. I can only hang one deer in my fridge at home, so if I'm doing that, I'll only take one, or if I, shoot two, then I might quarter one out and leave a different one whole to hang. I do like to hang the deer, I do, but most of the deer we eat, I've just cut them all up on the ground just because logistically, especially in the rut, like we're shooting so many, we just don't get to really hang them all that easy. So whatever seems to, be the most appropriate at the time is what I do.
That makes sense. Whatever your situation is, and it's sort of hard when you talk to different people because everyone has different opinions, but their circumstances are different too. So I always sort of encourage people to take a look at your circumstances or your situation to make the best decision for you, because the way someone else might do it might not necessarily suit how your not just circumstances but the environment that's around it, what you've got access to. So it's one of those things. And that's where it comes back to those videos, is that I love the fact that they're out there and this look, I haven't seen too many other ones on the same path of what you've done, which is what I really like as well. The vast majority I see are people filming their hunts and putting them up and whatnot, which I really I enjoy. Don't get me wrong, I thoroughly enjoy those. But it was nice to see the way this has been done in a different manner, as more that educational side to upskill people, because I really do think YouTube is the resource now. There's cost of living crisis, there's a million different things at the moment. Ammunition's expensive, going away is expensive, the whole sort of thing. I know there's some good people out there that do hunter education courses and the like, but some of them are pretty expensive. People don't want to think. I'd hate to see people that are interested in hunting getting out of hunting because they're uneducated, in the sense is that they just didn't have the access. And I think having a resource like this that people can watch, find out some information, at least gives them a bit more of an arsenal. And you said it before, which I really liked, and I'd feel you on this one, is each rut you learn something and then you want to apply it for the next rut. So just the fact that these videos there for someone to get a hold of, have a watch, is it going to make them the world's greatest hunter? No, but it doesn't need to. It's a starting point that's going to equip them a little bit better for success than if they had nothing. So, man, I really appreciate when people like yourself do that and do that time to help others out, because I think it's better for our community. And as we were talking off air, you're not going to make $1 million out of this. You're not trying to make money off people for doing this. You're doing this just to help out. And it's good to see that there's those people out there too that are just in it to help people out.
Oh yeah, mate. And I really appreciate you saying, and this is the thing too, like that there are so many good videos on YouTube, like those guys called the Bearded Butchers. Those guys are just unreal. And I love watching their stuff, and I agree pretty well with everything they say. But they are also pointing out, like they've got this butcher shop, they can hang a deer, and they've got these saws and all that. And I remember when I first started, I think, man, it might have been close to 15 years ago. There wasn't as much on YouTube, and I remember Googling, butchering venison, and there's people with band saws and some of this stuff, and I'm kind of going, oh God, right, yeah, well, I need to figure out how the hell I'm going to do this and get some deer back to my house. And it wasn't until I, learned that you could basically take every bit of usable meat off an animal with a knife. You don't need saws or whatever. I was like, oh, okay, I can manage this. And that's why in that one about the kitchen equipment, I talk about, vacuum sealers and all that stuff. But I'm like, if you've just got a $40 boning knife, you can get yourself a steel, and maybe if you can only afford to splurge on one piece of gear, get yourself a really good mincer, and even if you do an untidy job taking the meat off a deer in the field, just put the whole thing through the mincer. It's you'll always run into people who say things like, oh, I was always putting that backstrap through the mincer. And I mean, on one hand, yeah, maybe. On the other hand, it's like, well, who cares? Like, you put that meat through the mincer and you fed your family with it. No one should really have the right to have a whinge about the way you did that. And you've just achieved something really cool. And then, the more you do it, the better you'll get. And you might want to buy yourself a sous vide or a vacuum sealer or whatever, but it's really not that hard. Like I said, it's more about the knowledge. You don't need much gear at all when you're doing this stuff at home. It's just about having half an idea of what you're doing. And
then you slowly add to it. That's the other thing. Like when I first started out, it was also the knife thing. And then I haven't got a band saw, but I sort of got the recip saw and was able to get some food grade stainless steel blades for it. And that's come in really handy a couple of times, depending on what cuts I want. There's ways around things that you can sort of, get through and make do with until you sort of slowly progress and get better and better and better. And it's one of those things, like I love my rifles and, would I love to go out and buy a Seiko? 100%. Can I justify that amount of money when I can grab a ticker? No, I can't at the moment. That's just, that's the way it is. And there's plenty of people out there in a variety of positions. I was watching one today, like the Howards. They were talking about, there was someone posted about what rifle, and a couple of people said, get a Hower. I've got a Hower. Personally, don't rate it. I'd get the ticker any day of the week. But I don't know that person's financial circumstances. You do you. Having a rifle is better than not having a rifle. If I think we get hung up so many times. Everyone has their own way of doing things, which there's nothing wrong with that. And I don't really think – I think people are very quick to jump and criticise, and the reality is that you shouldn't really be – well, in my opinion, you shouldn't be doing that unless someone's doing something that's illegal, not ethical. Then by all means, I think you should, step up and say something. But if someone chooses to mince a backstrap, go for it. Like, who cares? It's not impacting you whether they eat it in any particular way. Just scroll on. I'm a big proponent of the scroll on factor. Like, if it's, there's so much negativity and people just talking bad about each other and different people, and same as what's going on in WA at the moment. I think they've got this gun rally on, and geez, it's divisive amongst people. And you're sitting there going, well, if you don't want to attend because you think it's a bad idea, don't attend. I don't personally think it's a good idea. I'll say that. I think I'm with more like Kate Fantanell saying that if you want to fight it, do it in the courts as opposed to a rally, especially called the gun rally. I don't think it's a really good I don't think it's a really good way to do it personally. Hey, if you want to go, by all means, that's up to you. I don't think it's the way I do it, and I don't think it's going to help. I think, if anything, it might hinder. But hey, like, everybody's entitled to make their own decisions and do it. It's funny. I mean, it's like this in everything. Everyone has different opinions, and they will make their decisions and project what they think is the best. And hey, look, as long as people don't get hurt, or as I said, it's legal and ethical, I'm all for people doing whatever they want that way.
Yeah, mate, and it brings us back to why we had our chat last year is because of some of the stuff I'd see people saying about you not being able to eat deer in the rut. And I'm not going to pretend that they don't stink a little bit and you have to be a bit more careful, but it's less about me telling everybody you should or you need to eat them all, but it's more like particularly with the way the social stuff is these days, I've got to be a little bit more careful because of my job and because I write for the magazine and stuff. So I'm just trying to always hold myself in a manner where if I'm ever putting anything on social media or making a comment or having a discussion, it's the kind of thing where I'd say it to that person's face, or I'd type it on the computer. It makes no difference to me, and it's also as much under the kind of like guise or whatever that I'm trying to steer things in a positive way, or I'm trying to help add some perspective or whatever. Like I would just never just make some negative throwaway comment for no reason. If I see something I don't like that much, which I do, then like you said, I just scroll on. And it's not to say that there aren't things that shouldn't be called out, but if it's just a case of criticising somebody because the deer they shot was really small or whatever, I just kind of find myself thinking, well, maybe that person wanted to fill their freezer up. Maybe it's their first deer. Maybe the farmer asked them, could you please shoot all these deer because there's far too many of them. Like I don't want to put myself in a position where I feel like I'm judging somebody who's having a red hot crack, and I wouldn't ever want anybody to feel like, oh, that Dylan Smith bloke, he's a prick, and he's always whinging about people or being condescending or bickering with people, because I just can't stand that. And again, you and I would be well aware, like in our daily jobs, I'm always dealing with immature arguments among teenage kids. I just don't ever want to put myself in a position where people would look at me on the internet and think, oh man, that bloke needs to grow up. I'm really conscious of it now. And that's again why I thought, well, rather than just, make post after post with people who say I don't like eating the Fallow Bucks, I'd be like, well, I'm going to put some stuff together, people can watch it. If they still don't agree with what I said, well, that's fine. I don't really care. It doesn't mean my ideas are worth any more or less than anybody else. It's just me sort of recognizing that there was some information out there that I didn't agree with, and then rather than be provocative and argue with somebody, I thought, well, maybe I can make a bit of a difference in this way. So that's what I'm trying to do.
I think that is a good point. I mean, I think I try and approach it the same way, because there is a high possibility with our profession is that you're going to have a student see your content and all your interactions on social media. And I try and hold myself to that standard, that I don't want to do anything that I would be ashamed of to my own kids or my students. And I think that's probably a good way to be honest, because there's been plenty of times where that scroll-on effect, I've done it, and there's been some comments made directly at me that I just haven't even engaged with, because what's it going to achieve? If someone doesn't like you or they're against you for some reason, you're not going to change their mind. And, I'm a big believer in lead by example and not to be a sort of hypocrite. So I think it's a really, I guess, a good thing in the way that sort of not stress, but that pressure or expectation of our profession is sort of molding what you're doing as well. I don't see it as a bad thing personally. That's what I'm trying to say. And look, as you said, you don't know, you mentioned there a couple of different things. You don't know the person's circumstances. Like if it's their first year, but you know what, if someone doesn't want to let the buck grow and it's their private access and they want to shoot it, so what? It's not yours. There's plenty of deer out there. There's plenty of game. You do you, because I'm sure you doing something has offended somebody else. The fact that we hunt, there is plenty of people that would like to see that stop. So it's a really funny sort of conundrum that you've got people that bag out other hunters because they didn't let it grow, or it was a baby, or what, are you shooting a buck at this time of year, blah, blah, blah. And it's sort of the exact same of what sort of anti-hunters do to us. They don't want us to hunt at all, and then we're still fighting amongst ourselves. And again, I'm not putting hunters down, because that's everything. It doesn't matter what your passion or outdoors hobby, or even if you're not into the outdoors, gaming. Everybody has their own sort of way and thinks theirs is the best, or and they will try and project that onto others. I think that's just human nature. So it's a funny one. I do think that as long as you're trying to put things out there in a positive manner to make a positive difference and enhance the lives of others, that's probably the best approach to take. Now, is that going to get you? I was talking to someone the other day, and we were talking about one of the videos that was going viral, and it's because there's a lot of expletives and people swearing and calling people names and out. And fair, look, you do you. I don't think it's a good look personally. Is a common sense someone just standing there talking in a polite, nice manner, raising awareness, is that going to get as much traction and go viral? Probably not. So it's sort of a really tricky one if you want to sort of get things out there into the, I guess, to raise awareness or make things a bit more brought to people's attention. I personally would do it in a particular way, but then that way is probably not going to ever be super successful either.
Yeah, mate. I've always maintained that I might have some chats with mates of mine who I trust about things we see that we like or don't like, but they're usually private, and I don't mean secretive, yeah. But I'm not into. I don't like the idea of criticizing people publicly or whatever. If they're still having a fairly red hot crack, like if there's illegal stuff or stuff that is a really, really bad look and they need to be called out, then maybe it's a bit of a different story. But sometimes I see people criticizing bigger YouTube channels or podcasts or whatever, and I'm thinking, well, that's all well and good, but those people, their heart's in the right place, they're doing their best. They're putting in a heap of effort to try and make some positive contributions. If you don't like it that much, that's all well and good, but you don't need to be running them down, or, maybe you could try and offer some advice or be constructive in a different way. Because again, I would hate for anybody to feel like I am some kind of keyboard warrior who just sits at home and, types up a whole bunch of comments about how you should have done this and you've stuffed this up and blah, blah, blah. But they don't sort of see me trying to, like you said before, lead by example. And look, I don't believe I'm someone who has some big reputation or platform to be educating everybody about this stuff. Like it's more just about the way I like to try and conduct myself personally, and once again make these kind of contributions in a manner that I'm capable of doing that people might find something useful in.
Yeah, it's interesting with the whole platform thing. Is I look at it and go, it doesn't matter if it's 1 or 100 or 1 million, right? I think that if you're doing it in a positive manner, it just helps one person, it's a win. And let's be honest, no one's making money out of this. We're not becoming millionaires or, giving up the day job. Not that I'd want to anyway, but it's a hobby. And I think that's the thing I love about the podcast is just getting to, I talk to people I want to talk to. I don't really, I don't care if they're famous or not famous, to be honest. It doesn't really impact me. I like to talk to people on here and just have discussions with people I find interesting or I enjoy talking to. And that's, it is what it is. And if people like it, they listen. If they don't listen. That's cool. I'd hate to ever think that it would be the opposite way. That I don't know how the blokes like Meat Eater and Joe Rogan and things do it, where they rely on it as an income, because then there's this other pressure. I like doing this for fun, and that's I guess the beauty of this is that I can talk to people that I like to talk to, or that I find interesting, and from a variety of topics, and even get to talk to people that I wouldn't have dreamt of even having access to or talking. And that's, the one I did with Professor Pask on the thylacine. Man, that was cool. Getting to talk to, Joe Castaway Coolis, taking the big five in Africa with a bow. Jesus Christ. I think he was the first person to do it. That was bloody cool. Super cool, interesting fellas, both of them. Yourself, obviously, I've got your back, and as you said before, Matt Jones, an absolutely champion of a bloke. I'm hoping to get him back on here and talk about what happened up at that shooting range. But just that's the beauty of social media in one sense, is that it connects people that are like-minded as well. I find that the people that I enjoy, I sort of talk to a lot more and keep in contact with, and I get to meet people and sort of there's been people that I've met that are on YouTube or high profile that I haven't really got on with. That's cool. There's nothing wrong with that. There's been people that are absolutely nobodies that I really enjoy talking to, and they've become good mates. I think that's the beauty of it. Everybody's different, and as long as people are doing things in a positive manner, in my opinion, and legal and ethical, man, that's such a good thing. Just go out there, be the best person. No one's perfect. We all make mistakes. Do what you think is best, and make the people hopefully around you proud. And mate, I think that's a really nice way to end up, because I think what you're doing with your videos, you would be making people proud of the fact that they are well produced, they are informative, and they're going to be definitely helping people out there for years to come. And that's the other wonderful thing about YouTube and things like that, is once they're up, people can just access them whenever they want to. So, mate, I know they take a lot of time to do, and we've been talking this for damn long time. As you said, last year, it's been pretty much 12 months since you came up with the idea, and we had that chat about it, and it's taken a good year to really fine tune and get them where they want to be. And as you said, they're not all completely finished just yet, but I know they're going to start dropping. Do you have any idea when you're going to start dropping them?
Mate, I figured maybe sometime around mid to late February, but we might have a chat about when this podcast might drop, and we might even time the first one dropping with that, just so people can go and find it. And I'll try my best to organise them into a playlist, so then, like, whether people feel like subscribing or just waiting to see stuff drop on Facebook or whatever, like with each week, I might just drop them all over a 6-week period, and that way they're just all there. And I've got some other ideas about more specific cooking ones or specific game processing ones. I was even talking with some of my mates here the other day about just as another project and something to work towards because I really enjoy it, I might, my next idea is to maybe put together a series about photography for hunters. So cover a little bit about gear and the basics of using a camera and stuff, but then have a heap of stuff happening kind of like out in the field to show people different things to think about. So not just to help people maybe take a little bit more tasteful and appropriate photos for, you know, if you want to choose that word, but also to have people be a bit more confident in their ability to capture some of these moments, which are some of the most memorable moments in their lives. And really, I've probably got, in terms of information that I have to offer to people, photography is probably one that I know more about than hunting deer or whatever else. So that's probably something I might look to start to get some content for here, starting after this or during this rut, and try and help people, up their photography skills.
Mate, I love it. A good idea. I know we touched on it a little bit in the episode with Zach. I got him on because he presented our local ADA and he talked about some of those things, and it was great to see there's so much to it. So we sort of briefly covered it, but that would be a great resource for people that really want to get into that photography side too, because there is so many things to it that I don't think it's not like just your phone point and shoot. So,
well, that's right, and that's the thing too. Like, everybody's got a phone. A lot of photos I see, and I'm not being critical of people, but a lot of photos that are taken on phones, if that's the best camera you've got, that's good. But just, you know, knowing maybe 3 or 4 things and doing those things could have made a particular photo like a lot better. That could then be, you know, presented on social media better, or be used in a magazine or whatever, or just something you might want to print to have in your house. So it's not like I think I see a lot of people doing a bad job with it necessarily, but it's something that I sort of have mates that I teach about photography as much as I can. So then when I need them to take photos of me when I'm in the field, they can do a really good job with it, which makes my life easier, because I've tried to teach my wife and she just doesn't want to come at the photography at all. So yeah, that's something I might look to do, but I probably won't even get to getting any of that together for, you know, months at least. So we'll just kind of keep an eye on it and see how we go.
Mate, love it. Tell people where they can find your stuff so they can keep an eye out for these videos. And if you haven't already, jump over, like and subscribe. I know I'll post it in when you put them up. I'll share them on my socials anyway as well.
Yeah, mate. Look, thanks very much. If people just get onto Instagram and type in Wilder Life, they'll find me. And if they get onto YouTube and type in Wilder Life or The Wilder Lifer, they'll find me as well. And even if you just type in Wilder Life Fallow, most of my videos are about archery or hunting fallow deer. So, and I'm pretty hard to miss with my dirty moustache. So that's where they can find me the easiest.
Well, mate, a pleasure as always. I wish you all the best for the upcoming rut, and keep doing what you're doing, because I love your work. So
thanks very much, mate. Appreciate it.
All right, listeners, bye for now. You've been listening to the Australian Hunting and Beyond podcast with Matt. Thanks for tuning in, and can't wait to catch you next time. But in the meantime, if you want more, you can find it at linktr.ee/Australian Hunting and Beyond. That will give you our YouTube, Instagram, X, Facebook, you name it. We'll catch you next time.